Should we get this thing started? Thank you for tuning in to Muse by Mariah, the podcast, where we dive deep into discussing mind, body, and soul. Thank you guys for tuning into another episode of Muse by Mariah, the podcast. I have another very special guest. Her and I have been good friends for like 3 or 4 years. We used to work together. Funny story, I hated her before we actually got to know each other, and now we're besties.
Yes.
So everyone, please welcome Paulina Minucci.
Yay.
She is just graduated with her master's in
clinical mental health counseling.
So we can say she's basically a registered mental health counselor.
Right. Not by the state, but
Not yet. Not yet.
Not yet, right.
But today we are going to be discussing the topic of the pain body, our internal pain bodies, how our external environment affects our pain body. And I actually found this word, this whole definition and meaning from the book, The Power of Now, which is by Eckhart Tolle. It's so amazing. 10 out of 10 recommends. You can get it on Amazon. And we're just going to kind of go into what the definition is of it. So in the book, he kind of describes it in a very like too classy for me. It's like too wordy of a definition for you to understand. It's like 3 pages long, the definition.
Yeah.
So we kind of have our own personal definitions that we're going to share just to not dumb it down, but just make it easier to understand. This is how I understood the topic. So the definition of your pain body is letting a negative emotion take over your mind and your body.
Yeah. I think that's pretty valid. How I defined it was how our body holds on to triggers and trauma that haven't been dealt with yet.
So it's negative emotion. So the one common denominator is the negative feelings that we carry. The way he described it too was anger, sadness, hurt. He said getting violent, anxiety, depression. What are these triggers to your pain body? And it's hard for people to acknowledge that.
Definitely. Because
you kind of just want to just sweep it under the rug and keep going with your day-to-day process.
Yeah. I mean, exposing your pain body in general, or kind of just understanding that it is there, it puts you in a very vulnerable position. And not everybody is ready to be put in that position because it's scary. It's scary to kind of sit with your emotions and say, okay, I'm feeling this because this happened in the past, or this made me feel this way. So it does take a lot of work. It's not, an overnight sensation, but the results can really free you of your own emotions and your own past trauma.
Yes. And if you guys do read the book and read the excerpt about the pain body in the book, he discusses it multiple times throughout the whole book, but there's one specific chapter where he kind of goes into detail. The one thing that I didn't like was that he kind of made it seem like it's a switch. You kind of can just switch this power on, the power of now, which is the title of the book, to be conscious in yourself, what you're feeling, your body, your emotions, all of that. And I think it's important to note that it's not just a switch. It doesn't happen overnight.
Right.
It is days, weeks, months, years long process to really kind of grasp what your pain body is.
Definitely. And I think something that I want to make very clear is that pretty much all of our behavior is learned. Right? So if we have been accustomed to reacting to a certain thing or something similar to something that's happened in the past, that behavior has been learned for years and years and years. So to then undo that and unlearn, what our pain body has taught us, it's going to take some time. So we really have to have that grace and, be patient with ourselves, because it's a learning experience.
Yeah. He talks about that too, that we need to go back to childhood traumas.
Definitely.
And when he said that, I was like, oh, fuck. Like,
yeah,
I'm just like kind of starting to go on with like the day by day triggers of my pain body. And like to think about my childhood traumas, it's a whole other world of shit that I don't want to talk about or deal with.
Absolutely.
But I feel like it's, for me personally, when I think about my childhood traumas and the triggers that I have for some of those, I think about it in a positive light. Whereas when I have kids, I'm going to show them why we should eat healthy for like the bare minimum example type of thing.
Yeah. It's all about breaking those generational curses too, because maybe what you experienced in childhood, maybe one of your parents experienced in childhood, and then the list goes on and on and on. But to recognize what happened, why it affected you the way that it did, and how you don't want to continue that kind of creates this whole new life for yourself and then generations to come.
And for people around you too.
Absolutely.
And you might realize that you gotta cut some ties with some people.
I mean, hey, listen, I always think about it in any interaction that you have. It could be me and you sitting here talking right now, you at a grocery store, you catching up with somebody. Every interaction that we have ever is an exchange of energies. So if you feel that your energy is not being reciprocated back or in their own perspective, you got to snatch that shit back, because our energy is so precious, and that energy that we're using towards this person could be used to deal with our pain body or to deal with other things. So, being in the here and now, again, it's going to take some time, but we'll get into that.
Yeah, we definitely will. I'm actually really excited to talk about this. That was like, we just got boom.
Yeah.
Just right into it.
Yeah. I just feel like you and I are very knowledgeable about these things.
Yeah.
Me from the studies that I've done.
And me because I went through a lot of shit.
Right. You're like, let me correct this real quick.
It's crazy to think, because ever since I don't know how else to word it, but ever since I started my spiritual journey and I started reading self-help books and watching videos and documentaries about like all this stuff that we're in control of that we don't know.
Right.
I feel like I kind of did take a step back and look at everything that did happen on a surface level, depending on the situation, depending on how deep it was. But ever since then, the relationships that I've formed and the relationships that I've lost, it's not really, I mean, it's affected me right in the moment, in the now. We can refer to it in the now because that's how we refer to it a lot in the book. It did affect me in the now, but the next day I was fine. Like, I was going on with my life because I realized that at the end of the day, it's me that I have to worry about. And I just wish I can just share that with everyone, you know, like.
Yeah. One of my favorite quotes of all time is, "You are the only constant in your life. Things come and go, friendships come and go, people pass away, people are born, whatever the case is. But you have to be okay with the decisions that you make on a daily basis, because you're the one that, you go to bed with yourself every night. So you have to be able to be okay with those decisions, whether it be, cutting off a toxic relationship that you don't want to, or a toxic friendship or anything. These decisions are hard. They're not easy, because so many of us like to hold on to the emotions that we felt during that relationship or the good times. But then when we kind of have those, what I like to call like zoom out moments, where you're like, is this actually benefiting me in some way? Is this enhancing my everyday? Sorry, the cat just
I know, I
skirted across. So just taking a step back and realizing it in your own perspective, because like I said, any interaction, any relationship is a two-way street. So it's
so much easier said than done.
Oh yeah, girl. 100%.
It's like, there's some people now that I realize, I don't want to say any names, but there's some people who I've kind of accepted them for how they are, because you can't change anybody.
No.
So, but then there's some people where I didn't accept, and I just cut those fuckers right off. I don't need that kind of energy in my life. They were triggering multiple pain bodies within myself, and it just was not worth the energy, no matter how close these people were to me, no matter what relationship or history that we have together. So how do you, like, this question just came up in my head, but like, what do you think the difference is? Like, both of these people are triggering my pain bodies, but why do you think I felt the need to cut off? I'm just asking as like a mental health counselor point of view. Like,
Right.
why did I cut one person off and then I just chose to accept the fact for another?
Yeah.
It's a good question.
That is a good question. I mean, it really feels as though you may hold value to more than the person that you kept around versus not. But you also kind of have to kind of imagine your life without both people, right? So if you say, okay, well, I'm going to cut this person off, is it going to make me sad? Or, you know, sometimes when you even ask that question, like, what if I just cut them off?
Yeah.
Or what if I'm just not friends with them anymore? You kind of feel like this weight being lifted off your shoulder. But then other people are worth keeping around, because any relationship, I don't care if it's platonic, a friendship, a family member, a boyfriend, girlfriend, partner, whoever, having that relationship there it's going to take work from both sides. If you and I just stay the same friends that we were when we first met, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you right now.
Definitely
right.
not.
So it's going to take some work, but it's about if both parties are willing to put that work in. And sometimes one party is doing 80% and the other is doing 20. The person that's doing 80 is like, I'm doing all these things for this person, why aren't they appreciating it, you know, blah blah blah. But at the end of the day, it's like, are you doing all of these things for them, or are you doing those things to just keep the relationship alive, even when the other person's kind of like a dead weight?
Yeah. And I feel like the triggers for that pain body, if you choose to keep, like, with those two relationships that I was just talking about, I completely separated them and I acknowledge the fact of what I did, meaning that I accepted their actions and how they are as a person, and the other person, I just decided it wasn't meant for me and it didn't suit my life path. I felt like if I were to meet, like, you know me, I'm not good at meeting friends, but if I were to like meet someone and start networking with friends people, I feel like I would acknowledge my trigger if I like found it's like a vibe thing. Like, I feel like it's tying into like good vibes, bad vibes.
Yeah, definitely.
And I can't like say like that's what would happen, because I obviously wouldn't know until that situation occurs. But I feel like it's important for people to acknowledge the fact that if someone doesn't like treat you right or do something and you have worked on it, it's okay to cut them off.
Absolutely.
But it's okay if you want to, like, if you can just accept the fact that that's the way they are and you don't take how they are and what they do personally, then it's okay to continue that relationship. You just, instead of seeing them maybe once a week, you see them once a month.
Right.
Type of situation.
Right. But the thing about everything that you just said is that our pain body can be triggered by anybody, whether it be someone you've known for years, a close friend, a family member, whoever. It doesn't, you know, the pain body's about you and how you want to deal with it and how you want to process that. So you can have somebody wanting to be there for you, wanting to help you through this time, but even though their intentions are good, you're like, I don't know, like, you know, what it is. So then you kind of have to have that tough conversation where it's like, is this a me thing, or is it a relationship thing?
Yeah.
Or is it a them?
What is it triggering right now?
Right.
Like, is it triggering my pain body? And then we'll get into why that's so important, that you're acknowledging the fact that your pain body might have something to do with it. You know what I found interesting?
What's that?
In the excerpt of the book where the pain body, it says that your pain body is triggered more for women. This is for women, more frequently during that time of the month.
Right.
Isn't that crazy?
That is crazy.
I never thought about it like that until I read it in the book. Like, obviously, like, fucking get crazy and like I want to like eat everything and I want to like punch you if you cross me the wrong way.
Absolutely.
And he acknowledges it as your pain body is getting triggered by your hormones.
Yes. Listen, ladies, I'm here to talk to you. So we all go through this time during our time of the month, and there's a lot going on physically inside of our bodies. So we just need to like take a step back and be like, look, there's a lot going on inside of me right now. I may want to hug you in one sentence and then, you know, kick your ass out in the next. But that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just, you know, I've been practicing a lot of having grace with myself in everything that I do, whether it be, you know, finding a job, a new relationship, having, you know, a weird interaction where I'm like, fuck, like, why did I say that? But it's like, calm down. It's like, it's not that deep, what I tell myself. But when it is that deep, then that's another conversation. But we don't got to get into that. It's a song for another time.
But do you feel like after reading that passage, because I never put the word pain body to my triggers, like it was a new word that I was adding to my vocabulary. Do you feel like you acknowledged any pain bodies that you might have that you want to discuss?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, apart from, you know, being a mental health counselor and, you know, doing the things that I do, you know, I'm a person through and through. And something that I want to put out there is that we are human beings, right? We're not human doings. We don't always need to be doing something all at one time. So my pain body really came from a lot of change going on around me. And again, as a 25-year-old, there's always going to be change consistently throughout my life. So I kind of recognize it as, at first, when it comes up, I'm like, oh my gosh, all this change is happening around me. You know, everything's going to turn to shit. You know, everything's just kind of going to go south in that sense. But then my best friend kind of put it in this perspective, and saying like, but what if everything works out? What if this is a good change? What if this brings out a new side of you? So that's kind of how I was processing my own pain body. And with change came a lot of anxiety for me. I kind of became very disassociated, where I felt like I was on autopilot mode a lot of the times. I would drive to work, talk to the people I talk to every day, come home, talk to my family, talk to my friends. But the conversation didn't stimulate me or it didn't resonate with me as if it normally would. So acknowledging that anxiety in that sense is really important, because I kind of had to have that tough conversation with myself in the sense where there's going to be a lot of changes throughout my lifetime. So I really have to understand, like, look, just because things are changing doesn't mean that it's going to be a bad change, doesn't mean that it's going to be a good change, just means that things are going to, you know, be different. But I can still be the same person. And I'm even changing right now, you know, on this spiritual journey that I'm on too. But it's a good change and it's a gradual change and I'm controlling it. Of course, some things are out of our control at times, but at the end of the day,
The way you look at it is in your control.
Absolutely. Yeah, my mom always says, she's like, life is 99% of what happens to you, and then the 1%, oh, wait, I fucked that up. Do you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, I know like, exactly what you were trying to say. I know that quote.
Yeah, it's
for anyone who doesn't know that quote, I'll give you another shot.
It's like 1% is like what happens to you, and 99% how
is
you
how
react
you,
to it.
Yeah.
Boom, got it. Okay. Oh my God, I look at that quote every day, people. Like,
it's okay. It's okay.
But yeah.
Maybe your pain body is triggered.
Right. Maybe. I don't know.
Oh my God. It's changed.
I'm turning red. But yeah, I mean, what has that experience been like for you, processing your pain body and, you know, going through those motions?
You know, there was a lot that when I read this excerpt and I talked to you about, I felt like you would be the perfect person to do this podcast episode with.
Yeah.
I started thinking about my pain bodies, and not one, not two, but like a million came to my mind about triggers that I have.
Yeah.
And I felt like I've dealt with shit from my childhood up until I would say like middle, late teens on a surface level. I never felt the need to dive deep into it.
Yeah.
And I still don't really feel that need to like really dive deep into it. Like I said before, I feel like the way that I process diving deeper is the way I'm gonna show my kids when they grow up. That's how I'm going to like completely acknowledge that pain body and the triggers that it caused me, and make sure that my kids don't have that or anyone else. When I try to talk to like my other friends or some family members about the way that they're looking at some things, I always try to say, don't take it personally. It's like my basic motto is like, try not to take whatever situation whatever they said, anything they did personally to make it affect you. So I feel like in recent terms, my pain, I've become such a homebody within the past like few months. Like,
yeah,
like,
you have.
like I used to go out and party, like drink every day, like
This girl was out all the time, people.
all
Like,
the time. Anytime someone asked me to go out, I was there. I was there 5 minutes early because, you know, I don't be late. But lately I've become such a homebody,
Yeah.
and socializing with people gives me anxiety.
Yeah.
Like, so I'm like, is this a new pain body that I need to acknowledge? And I have acknowledged it. And the way that I've kind of tried to find a solution is that I don't feel pressure when I go out. I don't feel pressure to drink. I don't feel pressure to like spend a rack or whatever wherever I'm at, because it's just not important to me anymore.
Right.
But that anxiety of having to socialize with people, it was like a scary thing, because that's not me.
No, yeah.
I was like, who am I?
It's not. And you know, I think a lot of people can definitely relate to that because of the pandemic and of quarantine. Everybody was so locked up and they were only interacting with their family members or the people that they were living with for, I want to say, for almost a year.
Yeah.
So losing that sense of social interaction and being in front of somebody, right? Recognizing their body language, because I'm sure we all FaceTimed everybody that we knew over quarantine just to have that social interaction. But sitting here and talking to you face to face is a lot different than us FaceTiming or us calling each other over the phone. Because and I have social anxiety too, especially when it comes to meeting new people. Because I'm like, before I would say, oh my gosh, what are they going to think of me? I have to like put this persona on or be somebody or amp up this part of my personality to make me more likable. But now it's kind of just like, you know, I am who I am. Like people who like me for who I am are going to just naturally come to me. But yeah, I think that social anxiety is something that a lot of people can relate to because, you know, we are such creatures of habit as humans. So when we get broken out of that, it's like, wait, hold on a second. Like, what are we doing here? And then we love to overanalyze everything. Like, did you see the way that they turned their body towards me? Or like, did you see the way that
Are you talking to me, Paulina? Just at me. Okay.
Right. At Mariah. But yeah, and it's like you were just saying, we can't take things personal with people we're not personal with. So the weird look that the grocery store person gave you when you were going through the McDonald's drive-thru and they have an attitude with you, that has nothing to do with you.
It doesn't.
At all.
And
but
that's when people, like, I feel like I used to just flip. Like, I would just go in. And it was funny because at the Greek place that I was telling you about, the girl there, she had such an attitude, but we were the first ones in the door. And my stepdad was like, why does she have such an attitude?
Yeah.
And I'm like, we're here a minute after they're opened. I would have an attitude too. And I was like, don't take it personally. Then we sat down, ordered, and like she brought our food out and she was fine. I'm like, see? And you wanted to just flip out. And I was like, oh, see, for me, like, this is an improvement for me, because if someone gave me an attitude, I'm usually like,
right.
Who do you think you're talking to?
Literally, right.
But I feel like it is a trigger, is socializing. I don't want it to be a trigger. It's like there's pros and cons to it, because the pro is I have enjoyed being by myself. I love being by myself. I love doing things for me. I love working out. I love reading. I love all this stuff. And then to me, going out on the weekend and like going out at 9, coming home at midnight, 1, 2, it's just not worth it to me. So it's like pros and cons to it, but I've acknowledged it. And then when I do go out and socialize and I feel that, I'm just like, I have to just tell myself to relax. And I acknowledge that I know why I'm feeling that, because I'm socializing. But I just need to calm down.
And listen, like, breath work works wonders. Breathing in through your nose, out through your mouth. And like a technique that I used to do a lot of the times in my internship was square breathing. So it's like you breathe in for 2, hold for 3, exhale for 2, and then just keep doing it. It just makes a square. But our bodies so much so much so go into this fight or flight mode, right? And that's really where that anxiety comes in. Because in that situation, let's, take your example of being at the restaurant. You could easily go into fight mode. Who does she think she's talking to? Why is she giving me this attitude? Blah, blah, blah. Or it could have been flipped over to the flight mode and been like, oh my God, like we're bothering them. Like we have to leave. You know what I mean? But that's kind of getting into the place right in the middle, right? That sweet spot where it's like the wise mind, which is that perfect combination of a rational mind, which is thinking rationally, but then also incorporating your emotions and validating those emotions. So staying in that wise mind is very hard, but it can be done. And your wise mind is going to look different than mine, than the next person, and the next person. So yeah, just kind of like keeping all of that in your conscious space is super important.
So what advice would you give someone who is always like a reactor? Like how can someone learn to just take a few steps back and not overthink any situation that they're put in? And I'm talking like any situation on a broad scale, whether it has to do with relationships, career, financially, personally, friendly, whatever. Like, do you have any tip or trick that they can do?
Slowing down your thoughts, I think, is the first step, because you want to understand, because when we react so quickly, right? It's almost like we don't even realize that we're doing it. It just kind of happens. But having that power over your mind of slowing down your thoughts and kind of just recognizing, okay, I want to react this way right now because of this. And something that I've learned to do that's been really helpful is asking myself why 5 times. And doing that, 1, slows down your thoughts, and 2, helps you understand where this trigger is coming from, whether it be a pain body or a past trauma, or if, pretty much just the reason why you want to react the way that you want to react. So let's say you're driving on the highway and you get cut off. Nobody likes to get cut off on the highway, especially me, because I'm always fucking late. So I'm always in a rush. So I could say in that moment, instantly, I could say, I'm going to follow that guy, give him the middle finger, roll down my window and curse him off. But then I can tell myself, Paulina, why would you want to do that? Because he disrespected me. Well, why did he disrespect you? Because maybe he's in a rush. Well, why is he in a rush? And it's like, it gets down to like the nitty gritty of it. Yeah. You don't know. His wife could be having a baby right now. He could be rushing somewhere. He could be late too. So it's really just breaking down those instantaneous thoughts that we all have, because we all, judge, or we all have these very quick thoughts that come up out of nowhere. So really just becoming more conscious of them and really understanding, why am I thinking this right now? Why do I want to react to this right now? And is it even worth it to react right now? Am I going to be upset about this in 48 hours? Am I going to go to sleep in the next 2 days and say, I should have said something to that waitress because she was rude to me? No. Is it worth it? No, it's not. So just kind of rationalizing with yourself in those moments would be my word of advice. But yeah.
Well, you are
the expert
in this situation. Right. I just run a podcast.
Come on,
I'm working on it.
Right.
So another main concept that excerpt of the book discussed while discussing the pain body was ego. Ego was brought up like every other word.
Yeah.
And every time I've used the word ego or heard someone say ego, I feel like, and this is just my personal, every time it has to do with someone who just thinks so highly, like confident of themselves. And while it was discussed in the book, it kind of talks about your ego. Like, I feel like it's never your ego. It's always someone else's ego that's like setting you off right now. So how do we feel about what Eckhart Tolle, how he described ego in the pain body?
Yeah. So like our ego is something that we all have. And I definitely can relate to you in the sense where it's like, stereotypically when we talk about ego, it's like, oh, that guy has a huge ego. He thinks who the F he is, blah, blah, blah. Like,
I was going to say that, but I was like, let me not. Like, I do feel like it's a lot of the times toxic masculinity, the alpha male. We always attach ego to it.
Yeah.
And that's not the case.
No, yeah, females can be like that too. But nonetheless, our ego is something that we all have. But when it comes down to it, is that the ego loves to make everything about itself. It's very, very selfish in that sense. So that's really why our ego and our pain body go so well hand in hand, because the ego reacts to this trigger that the pain body has taught us, whether it be irritation or a bad mood or getting in a fight with somebody or feeling anxious or whatever the case is. Because our pain body, our trigger, and our ego makes it bigger than it has to be, that's distracting ourselves from actually getting to the root or the source of this pain. So it's saying, oh, you should react this way because this is how you've always reacted to it, versus what would be more helpful, which is, why am I feeling this way right now? What about my environment? What about, what's going on around me is triggering this emotion inside of me? But again, like we said before, that's a lot of hard work that not a lot of us are ready to do or ready to be put in that vulnerable position, because it's turning that mirror inward and saying, what do I have to fix inside of me in order to live the best version of myself that I possibly can.
I think it's extremely hard for people who are so ego driven to even see outside of that. Like, it's tunnel vision, and the end of the tunnel is ego.
Yeah.
Like, and it's hard for me to like think back of a time where I had like ego or showed too much ego in a situation. I feel like someone needs to tell me a time, and then I can reflect on it. So how would you say someone who's so ego driven, what is a way that they can self-reflect, or what is some way that they can kind of just pause when someone thinks so highly of themselves and it's just they don't see anything else, that tunnel vision?
So we always want to make sure we know what our ego is being driven by. Is it being driven by success? Is it being driven by money? Is it being driven by relationships or something? Because again, our ego loves to make everything about ourselves, but the tricky thing about it is that it always is raising the bar higher and higher and higher. So we'll never actually be able to obtain what the ego wants us to obtain, because it's just never going to be reachable. So coping with your ego comes with a lot of mindfulness, and mindfulness can look different for so many different people. For somebody, it could be meditation. For others, it could be exercise. For others, it can just be journaling. Personally, I like to meditate and to journal, because I think it's a really great way to kind of just dump all my thoughts onto a page and just sit with myself. But for someone who is so ego driven, it's almost like, okay, you're driven by this ego, but what's the end result? What are you chasing afterward? What's that prize that you want so bad? And most of the time they'll say, oh, well, I want to be making 6 figures by the time I'm this age. Okay, but what if that doesn't happen? Then what? Is the world going to crumble in front of you? Is your life going to turn upside down? Most likely, no. So just practicing, honesty, surrendering our need to be in control all of the time, because so much of the time we want to be in control of our emotions or what's going on around us, but it's never going to happen. Our emotions come up, and that's what it is. And we are not our egos, we're not our jobs, our failures, our successes. But if we continue to let our ego control our life, we're never going to be satisfied with who we are, because again, the bar is always going to get higher and higher and higher. And it almost feels as though we're chasing after something that doesn't want to get caught. So just understanding what it is that our ego wants. Does it want intimacy from a relationship, but we're constantly searching for ourselves and other people? Is it constantly wanting more money? So we're quitting jobs to get to the next job, to get to the next, so it all just kind of comes back.
I feel like maybe I just had a revelation, but I feel like for people who are ego driven, I think the way that they see, or a potential way, not the way, that they can see outside of that is by loss.
Yeah.
Is losing, whether that's a person, like actually losing, like death, or if they lose a relationship that they were super committed into, or they lose a job, they lose an opportunity. I feel like with loss triggers the pain.
Absolutely.
And then once you hit rock bottom, it's like, where do you go from there? So someone who's so ego driven, they hit rock bottom, I feel like that's when the changes can start to happen.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm talking from personal experience too, because I feel like I always have seen myself in such a high light, right? But then there were certain relationships that I've had that have brought out different sides of me, not all good.
Yeah.
Some of them were really bad, and I hit rock bottom, and I realized like, ew, like I don't like feeling like this. Like this is,
it sucks,
because I always have like done shit for myself. I've always worked for what I want, what I think. I bring it to the table, I bring it alive. And when I felt that pain and that loss, it made me kind of self-reflect as to why does someone like want to lose me? Why would someone want to do this to me? Like I had myself up here, and it humbled me because I'm up here, yes, but there's other factors that go into it.
Right.
That just, it came to me. I feel like once you continuously lose something or you feel all like too much negative emotions is when you can start being like, okay, what can I do to make myself happy?
Yeah.
But he actually discusses in the book too that there's some people who are so deep into their pain body, and they don't see that light at the end of the tunnel. They don't see anything. That he says some people who are so into their pain body actually take it to suicide. Yeah. And he ties that into it. I was like, ooh, that's deep.
It's deep, but it happens, you know, because so many people don't feel that this is ever going to get better, or they'll never change, or anything like that. And, you know, suicide is something that unfortunately in the mental health field is talked about a lot. But it's understanding, again, where that's coming from. And so much of the time it's, you know, from a past experience that's, you know, more recent experiences have just built on and triggered that sadness, and something that we may not have dealt with. So yeah, the pain body can get really, really, really deep, really deep. And those wounds can get really deep. The way that I like to describe it is the pain body is these shackles that have these holds on us, right? We could say, oh, we're free. We're this free spirit, this free body, whatever the case is. But are we? Are we not recognizing something that's actually happening right inside of us, and we're just ignorant to it? We're choosing to ignore it. But we have to be able to have those tough conversations with ourselves and say, you know, this happened to me and it really sucked and it really wasn't enjoyable. I now look at my relationships in this is me. I look at my relationships in a totally different light. When I was younger, I felt I have to have a million friends in order to be valuable, or I have to have, you know, all of these people that like me in order to be something. But now, as I'm getting older, at the ripe age of 25, I feel as though it's more about the quality, and this is so corny, but like the quality of your friendships versus the quantity. Because your true friends, we've had conversations like this. I've had conversations like this with pretty much all my friends. My friends now know me inside and out. They know my pain bodies. They know, like, if I'm just like, Mariah, I'm getting really anxious right now, and you're like, well, this is happening. You know, it's nice to have those people around versus the people that are just like, just breathe it out, like, you'll be fine, because that is so invalidating, but it also amps up that pain body too. It's like fuel to that fire. So
this is kind of getting into the topic of how we can cope with our pain bodies, how we can even like have this conversation with ourselves about our pain bodies, and even with other people. Like I feel like I want to have a conversation. Well, I kind of know my family's like pain bodies. We're all very similar. I know like the little triggers for them. So I think it's about acknowledging that and being able to be there for someone too. It's not only about yourself, but wanting to be like you just said, if you were experiencing like having anxiety. That happened when I was in Colorado, actually, with Nicole, and we were driving through the Rocky Mountains, and I was like, it was so beautiful. Like, it was gorgeous, but, and we were taking pictures and videos.
Yeah.
And I was like, I started hyperventilating. Like, I started panicking because I had like this traumatic childhood story on Bear Mountain where like I almost died. And it reminded me of that because the roads were so small and there was mountains, and it was just like,
it's a lot.
It was a lot. And I told her, I was like, I'm getting anxiety right now. I was like, oh, I might have to pull over. And it was snowing too. It was a scary drive. And she was like, you're getting anxiety? I was like, yeah, like I'm feel like I'm hyperventilating, like I'm gonna have a panic attack. And she was like, okay, well, what do you plan on doing when we get back from the trip? And like completely like try to get my mind off of it. And obviously, you know how that story ended, but like she was a great friend in that moment. And that's exactly what I needed.
Yeah.
And it's important to have those kinds of people when you have something like that, where you don't even, like, my pain body at that moment came so fast. I couldn't react. Like, I had to react with a panic attack. Yeah. So it's important to surround yourself with people. And if you do, like, you're going to meet new friends, you get a new job, you meet new people, and you get close to them, to have that conversation, or kind of just look at them and ask what they're feeling, if they look like, you know, something's happening. So how can we cope, and how can we learn to be there for others that we care about in a better light? I know he talks about it a lot in the book, is by acknowledging it. And I mean, that's like self-explanatory, but how can we get deeper into just acknowledging it? Yeah.
Well, first I want to comment on, you know, when we are talking about it with somebody else. So like, let's say you're having anxiety for days and days and days, and, you know, you're kind of divulging that onto me, and I'm kind of really feeling this like heavy weight onto me because, you know, I'm an empath by nature, and I feel like so many of us are, but we may not know it, or some of us completely lack empathy, but that's another whole conversation. But sometimes when somebody is divulging these things onto us, we really start to get weighed down by those things. And that's not, you know, the other person's intention or anything, but you also have to acknowledge that that isn't your weight to carry, but you could still be there for that person. So one of the best ways I feel like you could do this is just by saying, is this my weight right now? And I've done this in the past. My clients have done this, and they've done it, and they say, holy shit, I just felt this whole huge weight being lifted off my shoulders, and I know now that it's not my weight. So being there for somebody doesn't mean that you have to take on their pain, because when you take it away, it may disappear from them, but then now you have it, and then you may want to pass it to somebody else, and it's never going to get resolved. It's just going to get passed around. But yeah, I mean, getting deeper into just bringing awareness, using, you know, our coping skills in the here and now, but also tailoring our coping skills to this current version of who we are, because we're constantly changing as people, right? Who you were 5 years ago is not the same person who you are now. So breath work may have worked for you back then, but you may need something a little bit more, you know, tangible to do. So another really great coping skill for anxiety is using your five senses in that way. That's a really great technique because you always have your five senses on you. You never forget them at home, anything like that. So if you're feeling really anxious while driving, walking, at work, whatever, recognize, okay, what are 5 things I can see right now? This painting, I can see your hat, I can see this microphone, I can see my phone, my water bottle. And it really brings our attention to what's happening right in front of us. It's a great distraction technique. And, you know, being in that wise mind that I was talking about, which is just that center of rationality and emotional mind, because again, it focuses our attention on one issue, and slowly we can start to expand our awareness. And it's really one of those zoom out moments again, because I think like you're a more rational thinker and I'm a more emotional thinker, but having that perfect balance really helps us make decisions that are right for us. I may think something that you decided I wouldn't do, and vice versa, but it doesn't matter because it's not, I don't have to live with that decision. Right. So with the wise mind, you want to make sure that it's your wise mind. I'm not copying and pasting it from me. I'm not doing that for somebody else, but it's for me. And again, you really just have to get to know yourself, spend time with yourself, meditate, exercise, journal, do something that allows you to feel alive and feel stimulated by something that you're doing. I really like going on walks by myself and listening to music. Or like I said before, I really like journaling because then I can look back. And again, this is another mindfulness technique. Something I've also done with my clients is that, like, with journaling, it's really incredible because you can look back at all of your progress. And that really, again, brings you into a zoom out moment and saying, wow, like I used to feel this way about this thing. I was journaling about this all the time. But then as time went on, I kind of realized maybe this isn't so important anymore. Or maybe I don't really want to put so much emphasis on this anymore. So it's really just about getting to know yourself, understanding, you know, where these pain bodies are coming from, what coping skills are going to work for you. Because I have a friend who's like, journaling, not for me, right? But she loves to run. So she's like, running is my therapy, where I can just, you know, get it all out on that run. The bitch runs like 8 miles a day, but something I could never do, but that's neither here nor there. But yeah, it's just about doing things that are going to bring you that inner peace that so many of us are searching for, but may never find, but you just got to figure it out. Yeah.
So I feel like for our people who listen and get this far into the episode, I feel like a great exercise to start with is by sitting down with yourself, and you don't have to write it down necessarily, but think back to like the earliest time you felt a negative emotion in your life.
Right.
And that can be 4, 5, 6, 7 years old. That can be 20, 21, 30, 40. You never know.
Yeah.
Think back to a time where you felt triggered and try to kind of analyze and break down your feelings in that moment. Because if you remember it in the now, you remember how it happened, why it happened, why you were feeling like that, those emotions. And that's the first step in acknowledging it.
Definitely.
And if you keep going through your whole life timeline on every negative emotion that you felt that was so significant to you that you can remember it to this day, you are having that conversation with yourself without having a conversation.
Absolutely.
You're 100% self-reflecting. And then you can start, once you get to the present, once you get to the now, then when those emotions come up again in present time, then you'll be kind of equipped with the tool of acknowledging it, analyzing it, understanding, and becoming conscious of it is how he describes it a lot in the book. And you'll realize that this whole episode and this whole pain body, it's like, I just feel like that's a great first step.
Yeah,
is
definitely.
to just sit down with yourself.
Yeah.
Set a candle, you know, maybe play some like music, some frequency tunes, and like to get your mind thinking.
Yeah.
And whatever emotions come up during that time, whether you start crying, whether you start feeling angry, let it happen.
Let it happen.
Let it happen.
Yeah. Because so much of the time when meditating, we are like, oh, I'm not supposed to be thinking about anything right now. Like, let me just block everything out. But no, like, just kind of like let it flow. Let the things that are coming into your mind seamlessly come in, acknowledge that they're there, and then watch them leave. It's almost like throwing the emotions like off a cliff. You see it in your hand, you know what it's there, but then you're like, see ya, and then you just kind of chuck it off the cliff. But also, you know, I've said this a couple of times now, but showing yourself gratitude and having gratitude in your everyday life and just recognizing what you are grateful for, because that's really how the universe rewards you with more abundance. And if you acknowledge what's happened in the past with your pain bodies, how your pain bodies were developed, what things make up your pain bodies, and really just kind of pulling those puzzle pieces apart to then it just gets down to one, and then you're like, okay, I'm done with this, and then you move on to the next one. So yeah, bringing yourself into the here and now, but also acknowledging the value in going into the past. You had pulled a quote from the book that I want you to read. I have a quote too that I'm gonna start wrapping this episode up with. Sure. The pain body, which is the dark shadow cast by the ego, is actually afraid of the light of your consciousness. So the more light you bring to that pain body, it's almost like in The Wizard of Oz when the man behind the curtain, he gets exposed and you realize that he's not really this big powerful thing. It's just a regular dude. The more light you bring to that, the more you realize, okay, I'm processing this, I'm doing the work right now. And sometimes it feels like work, but other times it doesn't. But then at the end of the day, when you get to a place where you can turn around and look back at this long road that you've been on, you're like, holy shit, look at all this work that I did. And that's where gratitude really comes in, at least for me. But I think that can be helpful in a lot of people's lives.
Yeah, that's like in my last episode, he talked a lot about positive thinking, positive reflection. So when you realize, like, if you're getting triggered by your pain body and you start to, first you acknowledge it, you become conscious of its presence, and then you start thinking, why is it here? But you don't let those negative emotions take over you.
Right.
Those positive emotions shine through.
Yeah. And I think something that I just want to quickly add is, like, with positivity, I feel like there's such maybe like a stereotypical connotation around it where it's like when people
what is the thing that people, it's toxic positivity is when people say like good vibes only or positive vibes only. Like that is actually realistic. Not what you're supposed to say.
Yeah, it's not realistic because we all go through so much shit in our lives. But positivity and positive thinking is not going through the world with rose-colored glasses on saying, oh my God, every day is so amazing, blah, blah, blah. It's saying, today sucked, but I'm confident that tomorrow will be better. And just always having that light at the end of the tunnel and saying, I can make tomorrow better by choosing not to do this, or maybe choosing to get up an hour earlier to do something. So it's about the decisions that we make, but it's also about understanding our own pain body and understanding our own body in general.
So one last quote that I highlighted in my book, because I'm a highlighter when I read.
Love that.
In the excerpts when he's discussing the pain body is that pain can only feed on pain.
Yes.
Pain cannot feed on joy.
True.
Mic drop.
Literally. If I could drop this mic, I would.
Don't drop it.
Right. But don't do that. Right. Yeah, Brene Brown, who's someone that I really love and admire and look up to. She's a motivational speaker. She's a PhD. She's just a bad bitch in general. But something that she says is we can't have joy without being vulnerable or without having gratitude, because we so many times resist ourselves from being in certain situations because I'm scared or I don't know how it's going to turn out. But that's like kind of like what we were saying before. What if the situation brings you so much joy? And being vulnerable doesn't mean kind of, laying it all on the line. It just means that you're showing up and you're saying, this is who I am and this is how I'm going to be. So keeping that in mind is key. Word.
Well, this was a really good episode. It was such a fun might not be the right word, but it was such a good topic to discuss.
Yeah.
Because I feel like if people can now put the word pain body to their negative emotions, it'll be easier than just saying I'm angry now or I'm upset now. You can say this is triggering my pain body right now and keep going. I think it's a really good thing for not only like us our age, but to teach kids, like, why are you upset right now, little Billy? This is triggering your pain body. Maybe like teach everyone this.
Definitely. The last thing I guess I'll say is when we are labeling our emotions too, it's important not to say I am this, right? Because that's embodying the whole emotion. So if I'm saying I am upset, that's kind of embodying everything that word actually means. I can sit here and say, I'm Paulina, but that means that's true, right? Because I am Paulina. I'm not embodying every Paulina that there ever was. But instead of saying I am, maybe just saying like I'm feeling this way. Because then it kind of separates you from your emotions, and that way it's a separate entity. And that way it's easier to deal with if it's outside of you versus if it's inside, if that makes sense.
Yes, that definitely makes sense.
Cool.
So do you want to put your Instagram handle out on there?
Sure.
Let's say at, what is it? At Paul.
I think it's just my name. I think it's
at Paulina. I can put it in the show notes too for you guys to check it out.
So my Instagram is at my name, Paulina Minucci. If anyone has any questions or just wants to talk, my DMs are always open. I am on private because clients and such, but just,
Yeah, or just reach out to me and I can forward you to
definitely
the expert herself. Do you have any resources like that off the top of your head for someone?
Well, I'm reading a great book now. It's called The Rhythm of Now. That has really brought a lot of things, to light. There's so many good guided meditations on YouTube. I like Spotify versus Apple Music. A good music to listen to when meditating, it's miracle frequency music that really gets me in the zone. But yeah, whatever works for you is going to work for you. Don't worry about if it works for anybody else.
And for anyone who is interested in reading, I'll just repeat, the book is The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. And he discusses so many amazing things about ourselves and how to deal with certain things that come up, how we continue to process some situations that we've had in the past, and really embracing the power of now, our current life, present time, and how important it is. He puts an emphasis on you shouldn't live in the past, but you shouldn't live in the future. You shouldn't think like where you're going to be in 5 years. You shouldn't put a timeline to that. You should really live in the now. So it's a 10 out of 10 recommended reading.
And something else with the power of now, it's like recognizing that the things that you wished for or the things that you hoped for that are happening to you right now, but you're wasting time on saying, oh, I can't wait for this to happen, but you're not even enjoying the things that you wanted to happen, but that's right in front of you. So just being mindful and conscious is the key.
The power of now.
Yes.
Period.
Heard.
So make sure, if you guys don't already, follow me on Instagram and continue to check out the site musebymariah.com as new articles and episodes are posted weekly. Thanks, guys.
Bye.